Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. So thank you so much for taking a minute out today. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity.
You bet. So before we get into your life as a writer and a motivational speaker, the self-help realm, I want to know one of the biggest things that probably threw everybody into a tailspin and helped the self-help world was the COVID time. So 5 years ago, we would be 1 week into it, figuring it out. How did you make it through that time period, and how did it ultimately change the trajectory of your work and what you do in your life now?
I was in a completely different place in my life. I'm from Chicago, so
Okay.
I was living and working in Chicago. I was a hairstylist. I was married. I was figuring out life at 21 years old. And then COVID happened. So I turned 21 in the pandemic. And that's when I started school when I was 20, got married along the way, and then realized the relationship was really unhealthy and really toxic. So when I was 23, I decided that I was gonna move on and go our separate ways, and we did. So, but I wanted to take my healing journey more serious and take it to a deeper level. And the only way that I could have done it for myself was to go somewhere where nobody knows me. So I moved to Mexico 10 months ago and I started writing and podcasting.
Amazing. So let's find out exactly what you do right now in 2025. I'm going to put you in front of a bunch of grade school kids, and it's career day. And one of the kids in the back of the room is curious and is like, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" How do you answer them?
I teach people of learning their worth, their self-confidence, their self-image, because I had a really bad self-image. And I think that's also why I got myself stayed in such an unhealthy relationship as long as I did. I was scared. I didn't feel worthy. And I teach people how to nurture themselves from the inside out, whether it's emotional regulation, mental stability, resilience, and also how you're taking care of yourself. How are you talking to yourself? Those kinds of things.
What did you want to be when you were young, when you were like in the second or third grade? What was your dream?
A hairstylist.
Okay, all right. So yeah, all right, I got you. So what were these foundational elements that were planted, the seeds planted? Take me back to where you were born and raised. What made you want to be a hairstylist, and then ultimately to get to a point where you're helping people and writing and speaking?
My biggest goal, so what made me stand out and what made me different as a hairstylist is that I loved educating my clients, whether it was about the products they were using or it was how to take care of their hair at home. I loved educating them, but I didn't see myself in like a teacher setting in a classroom. So the only way that I can take my education further is through writing and through podcasting to share the message to a larger audience.
So, you know what's interesting? Obviously, I've been getting my hair cut my whole life. I remember when I was a kid, there was an old couple. It was Harvey and Susie. And, it was just that it was kind of like Mayberry. You walk in and everybody knows them and they love them. And I remember some of the little factoids they would throw out, like your hair grows in a circle, and I didn't realize that. And those little things. But I don't know that I thought about, and I've thought about it here and there, but the power of people that decide to cut hair and to be a hairstylist, the very personal realm. There's just something personal about giving somebody an image and giving them the way that they're going to see the world for the next month or a couple months. It's a big deal. And then you have to craft conversations. It's all these socio-emotional things that go into it. And I realized that because my son, who's on the spectrum, he has gotten to a point where he wants to be as bald as possible, but it's expensive to get his hair cut all the time, so we found a barber college. And everybody in there, it's really personal, and I'm seeing them in these dreams that are taking flight. And it's a very interesting realm. Have you ever really delved into the psychology of being in that world and how important it is for people with their image and how society is so weaned on the way we look?
Absolutely. I mean, I hated my hair growing up. I hated how I looked, and that's also because that also added to having a bad self-image is because I felt like I was always being judged or I was never enough. And when I went to the hairstylist, she would do my hair and it was great, but there was nothing after. And that's what I didn't like. So when I went to school, my initial thought was, I'm going to go to cosmetology school to learn how to do my hair and my makeup. because my previous background was actually as a dancer. So in the ballet studio, they tell you how to do your hair and your makeup. 9 times out of 10, it's stage makeup, and you don't want to be walking around in public like that. So I really had to break that apart, and I enrolled in cosmetology school, learned how to do my hair and makeup so I can help others.
So, how did coming from that world into the world of helping people get to a better mental place, how did that knowledge and those skills lend to what you're doing now?
Yeah, I was in a really abusive relationship, like it went from dating to 2 months into us being together to living together, and then a few months later getting married, and then a year and a half later, we decided that we were just gonna go our separate ways. And I learned so many things that I didn't know once upon a time because I was so naive and such in a bubble
Yeah,
that it makes me wonder how many other people are naive or in this bubble of telling themselves it's okay, it's not abusive, or it's not that serious. Because something that like I would get told a lot is one, you're being dramatic, or two, it's not that serious. And quite honestly, if somebody's telling you that, that's a red flag because it is serious. If
yeah,
somebody is constantly criticizing you, if somebody is constantly bringing you down, it
yeah,
is serious and you need to do something about it.
yeah. You know, I was listening to a podcast recently. It's one of my favorite ones. It was one of the first podcasts that really kind of hooked me in, and it's called Here Be Monsters. And it's this guy that just kind of analyzes things from a very unique perspective. And the last episode he went on like a 2 year hiatus. And the last one he did was about an LA hairstylist that moved to Germany. And there's a whole backstory to that, but it was about him giving a cancer patient his last haircut and how deep it was, and you could hear all the sounds and the conversation and all of that. So my question to you is, what is the most dramatic transformation that you've been involved with a client in your life that's left an impression on you all the way to today?
A client that has left an impression on my life, I think they're all so unique and they're all so wonderful. I think one of the biggest things that has helped me create a loyal clientele, and they would come to me, is because it was my personality and the education piece. Like I remember this one time I was new to this salon. I just started working in the city, and this lady comes in for a cut and a color, and it was my first time doing her. I just met her, and then at the end of it she was like, oh my god, I love my hair, you're so great, can I please give you a hug and take a selfie with you? And I was like, that's what we
Yeah,
do our job for. It
yeah,
may be long hours, it may be a lot on your feet, but when you can say that you help somebody feel confident in their image and teach them how to replicate it at home, it's really rewarding.
yeah. So in this transformation in your life, I mean, exiting an abuse or a toxic relationship and moving to a different country is a big deal. I mean, it just is. Who has been that hero, that inspiration that's helped you find this lease on life and to do these things?
My 5-year-old self.
Yeah.
My 5-year-old self, I remember, so my parents, they're actually from another country. They're from Poland. And
Okay.
when my parents were 18, they moved to America and they met in America and they figured it out together. And they were always my example. But at the same time, I remember they worked a lot. And I remember when I was like 5 or 6 years old, my dad was traveling a lot for work at the time. So I would see him maybe once a week or once every 2 weeks because he was always working and doing whatever he could to provide for a family. But I remember my parents woke me up at like 11 p.m. one night and they were like, okay, Aneta, go say bye to dad. He's going to go to work and you'll see him when you see him. And I just remember sitting at the top of that staircase and telling myself, I don't know what I'm going to do in this life, but I know I need to do something different in order to change these patterns because I'm thankful for what they're doing to provide for us, but there's got to be a better way.
Yeah.
So, my 5-year-old self.
Yeah. So if you could meet anybody on the planet right now that you find inspirational, that has a wonderful backstory, that you could spend time with, ask questions, learn from them, who would that be?
Lewis Howes.
Okay. Who is
I
that?
really, I really like him. So he's another podcaster from Ohio, and I remember when I was in dance class, I love to travel for dance. So like any opportunity I could take it, I would. And I remember I flew out to from Chicago to LA to go take this class. And at the end of it, this girl was like, "Oh, there's this really cool book, The School of Greatness. It just came out by Lewis Howes. If anybody's interested in motivational stuff, you should look into it." And when I read his book, immediately I like resonated with a lot of it. Not
Yeah.
everything, because everybody's different, but he's from Ohio. He was trying to figure out his purpose. He had dreams of being a professional athlete. I had dreams of being a professional dancer, and things just weren't working out with the athlete side. So then we had to figure out and find our purpose. And I've been listening to his podcasts for like 7, 8 years now.
Very cool. That's excellent. So, how do you balance all this out? Being in the realm of self-help, helping people get to a better place, you got to swim through deep stuff to get people to a better point. How do you balance that? You got to take care of yourself and your soul. You're helping other people. What is that motivation every day to do that at the best of your ability?
Really start my day with mindfulness. You know, I'm a faith believer. So I really hone in on my relationship with God and talk to him first thing in the morning, throughout the day, and before I go to bed. And I just tell him, I'm like, tell me what I should do today. And I kind of let that, my faith, guide my steps. You know, I go on long walks, listen to podcasts, work out. Really, I'm really picky about who I associate with as well. Because
Yeah,
I think that's one of the biggest things when you want better for yourself, you have to learn to be okay with yourself.
yeah,
And that was something that I struggled with for a long time. Also, why I was so attached to my last relationship, because I had like anxiety. I had a lot of anxiety. So I always felt like attached, and I had attachment issues. So I really had to learn how to be comfortable with myself. And that goes back to looking at yourself in the mirror and telling yourself that you are worthy and
yeah.
you are capable and you can do anything that you dream of.
So let's say you have a dream tonight. You run into that 5-year-old version of you, and you could give that version of you a piece of advice based on this life you've lived already, the wisdom you've gained. What advice would you impart?
Fail more. Fail is not losing. Fail is first attempt in learning. The
Yeah,
only way you lose is when you quit, because you've never seen a professional athlete at a high pro level quit.
yeah,
They failed their way to the top. They didn't quit.
yeah.
There's a difference.
Well said. So let's say you walk into a room with all of the clients that you've had, everybody that's known you in a business sense, and you go up to a podium in front of them and you get to tell them one fun thing, one fun story, something that would humanize you to them in a different way than they know you from a business sense. What would you tell that group of people?
Outside of a professional setting,
Yeah, just a really fun thing.
I'm like really goofy outside of my professional world,
Yeah,
especially living in Mexico and learning a new language. It's
yeah,
so funny. Like if I don't translate words in my mind before I say it,
yeah.
then I'll say something goofy. Like I remember I went to a graduation party and I made a friend there. And he was like, "Yeah, my birthday was like last week." And I was like, "Oh, that's so cool. Feliz Navidad." And I told him Merry Christmas instead of Happy
That's well,
Birthday.
yeah, right. I get it. I get it. I was just talking to someone, a musician in Italy this morning, and I was like, "Buongiorno," and he was started saying something in Italian to me, and I was like, "Wait, dude, it's been so long. I'm not even there." I remember being in Rome when I was in my 20s, and I ordered a pack of cigarettes correctly, and they just kind of looked at me and said, "Good job," and I was like, "Yes," but it was so small. It's like dove de bagno, just where's the hotel? Like little things, but I can see that how your brain. But the weird thing about living in 2025 is you have all these translation devices. I went into a Walmart the other day asking where like belts were, and the woman was like, "Hold on a second." And she said, "Come here." And she said, "Speaking on my phone." And I did, and it translated to Spanish. And it was totally cool. So those things are like out there that can help now.
Wow. Yeah, those are super helpful too, but I just really like to
Yeah,
get it and do it. So
yeah.
this is so funny. Like the other day, I was talking to a girl and she's like, "Oh, where are you from?" And I was like, "Chicago." And she was like, "Oh, how is Chicago?" I'm like, "It's good, like, but it gets really cold. But when it gets really cold, everything turns into ice cream." And I meant to say ice, but I told her ice cream
That's
instead.
awesome. That's awesome. So, speaking of Chicago and Mexico, what do you miss the most about Chicago and what do you love the most about Mexico?
Summer in Chicago.
Yeah,
I think I love Chicago because it's a really community based and it's a great place if you're starting out your professional life.
yeah,
But I also spent a lot of time there. Like I went from growing up in the suburbs to living by the airport by O'Hare with my ex-husband. And then I moved to the city. So like I lived like the city life
yeah,
and I loved it all, but it's just so inconsistent with the weather. And that's what I couldn't handle. So when I moved to Mexico, it was a no-brainer. You know, the weather's consistent, the people are nice, the food is better. So
yeah.
it's really
That makes sense. So, of everything that you've done and evolved into at this point in your life, what are you the proudest of?
the person that I have grown into mentally and emotionally. You know, it's funny because I was just thinking about this the other day, and it's like I used to pray and dream about being who I am today. And I'm so thankful that I didn't give up because you will eventually get to where you want to be as long as you don't give up. You
Yeah,
just have to have the resilience and the faith to keep going. Those are the two key factors, the resilience and the faith, and you will eventually make it. The timeline, it's not up to you. Like, yes and no, but there's a perfect time for everything. And whenever we get into the mentality of comparing our journey to somebody else's journey, it's a really unhealthy cycle to be in.
yeah,
Because I remember when I was growing up as a dancer, I had these two dance teachers. I started at this dance studio like the first week they opened up until I graduated high school. And two of the teachers that opened it up, they went to high school together, they went to college together, and the difference is that one got married right away and had two kids, and the other one didn't get married until I was in high school. So like about 10 years later, and then she had kids. And the one that had kids and got married later on, and she said, everybody has a different timeline, so don't compare your timeline to anyone else's.
yeah.
And I always look back at that example.
That's interesting. That is good advice. Really good. So, at the end of the day, everyone has a perception of you family, friends, clients, everyone that knows you, all of your listeners, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
A resilient, kind-hearted, and giving individual. I love to give. I love being able to add value to others. That's the biggest thing for me is I want to know how I can add value because if I can't add value, then what can I learn?
Yeah.
It's either you're adding value to someone or you're learning from someone. And if you're not doing either one, then you're not really growing. And for me, growing is the most important thing.
So, we talk 10 years from now. What are you going to be happy that happened? What do you want to see happen?
Sharing more education through my podcasts and my writing and reaching a wider audience worldwide.
Excellent. So, if anyone wants to tune into your podcast, Nourished Inside Out, they want to reach out to you, they want to learn more, any of your writing, any of the good work, where do they go?
It's available on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or anywhere where people get their podcasts from.
Okay, excellent. This has been a great conversation. Thank you so much. Thank you for your story. Best of luck with everything. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Joe. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Hello, friends. Joe Dimino here. I just wanted to let you know that after 30 years or so, I have finally released my first book of poetry through the mighty Spartan Press here in Kansas City, Missouri. As the creator and host of both Neon Jazz Radio and the Famous Interviews with Joe Dimino podcast, along with being a visual artist, I'm ready to embark on a new adventure and want you to be a part of it. You can get a copy online via Barnes & Noble, Amazon, and actually on the streets in Kansas City at the great Prospero's bookstore off 39th Street. You can also visit joedimino.com for links to the book, to more poetry, and everything in my world, including paintings. Thanks for all of the love and support over the years, and please dig the words.